Good evening, everybody. My name is Colin Livingston. Welcome back to Talkin Torque. Today is the 12th of October, 2023. These podcasts are kind of interesting. They're kind of strange, and they're also kind of a pain in the ass because sometime get a good string of guests, get lots of decent conversation topics, and can just kind of roll from one to the next to the next. And then we get into issues with scheduling, maybe a little disinterest, maybe even a little bit get a little discouraged because things don't go as big as we like. And it's easy to kind of put them to the side. Then there's shows like today. This is kind of a free form show. I've had a lot of different thoughts bouncing around in my head, and this is probably the best forum for me to pontificate what gets bounced around in that coconut of mine. We've got a few things going on. We um, might have a few guests pop on. There's a couple of invites out there, and a couple of guys said that they maybe want to go, but I'm not really sure what's going on. So I need to keep it kind of loose and kind of goosey here tonight. Also, kind of just admiring this new haircut. Not that I did anything. I've been going to the same stylist now for over 20 years. Just love her to pieces. Our good friend Adelaide Romph over at Chatter's Hair Salon, Mayfield Common here in Edmonton. Always makes me walk away with a little bit better self-esteem than when I walk in there. I tend to go a little bit too long and get a little bit of shaggy dog when I go in there, and then when I leave, always feel a little bit better. But I mean, really, it looks pretty good. Nice little fade on both sides, leaving it a little bit longer for the time being. And yeah, it works for me. It was really good because we're back doing the Cantork race report. That's with our friend Jason Greger over on Sports 1440. And even he said, like, hey, do you just get your haircut? Like, yeah, I came straight from, she had a cancellation. So I was able to sneak in, got the mop chop, and then booked it over to the mall. And thankfully, now these haircuts aren't for nothing because we stream live over there as well on YouTube through the Oilers Nation. So, um, yeah, it was great to. It was nice that it was noticed, and unfortunately or fortunately for me, I never see the comments that come through the text line or that get thrown up through YouTube. So, um, I'm still immune from all the negative comments, which is great. But had a really good conversation this morning with one of our customers, and well, I didn't get his permission to mention him by name or the company he's with. I'll just say his name is Justin, and Justin, I think I've only talked to him once in my life by phone, and then we had a couple of emails go back and forth, and then somehow, some way, when he came into the office, we got into this existential conversation that lasted about 45 minutes until we both kind of needed to get back to our day. And it goes back to something that we've talked about quite a bit when I do an appearance with someone like Dean Blundell on our parent network, or part of obviously the flagship show of our Crier Media network. But I'm a firm believer, and the older I get, the more I start to believe. I'm moving more in one direction than another. But I'm a staunch believer that if we take the things, we as society, I don't care if that's, on our block, in our town, as a country, our hemisphere, or the entire world, if we boil down what we believe in, and I'm not talking about spiritually, I'm talking about what we hope to achieve as human beings, we're going to agree on 85, at least 85%. There's going to be 15% that we maybe disagree on, the way that we raise our kids, the way that we handle taxes, the way that whatever it is. But even within that 15%, we're not going to be diametrically opposed. We're just not going to be in entire agreement. And somehow within our society, we keep getting tricked into believing that it's the 15% that we should be focused on and not the 85% that we all agree on. And I think that's where we really, really go wrong as a society, and where we get caught in this real trap of it's getting way easier to fight with each other than it is to have a conversation with each other, especially because we come at these things believing that the other person is wrong and we have to convince them that we're right. There's so many examples of this, but right now politically, if we start talking about politics, you're likely going to identify with a party. And in Canada, we have, we'll call it three major parties and then a couple of fringe parties. We've got the governing Liberal Party, which would be most closely associated with the Democratic Party in the States. We've got the Conservative Party, which would, I guess, most closely be represented by the Republicans in the States. But we also have the NDP, New Democratic Party, which tends to be more on the socialist side of things. Then we have fringe parties like the People's Party of Canada, the Green Party, where they're very narrow, objective, and without a lot of support. And as I was talking to Justin today, I have no idea what his political belief is. I have no idea what his religious belief is. But as we talked about all these things, we kept agreeing on why things are not going so properly. Because when people are in power, regardless of the government, I don't care if it's the current Liberal government, the previous Conservative government, or anyone before that, history has always shown that we cannot have the same governing party for too long, because then they become very complicit, they become very lazy, and their role becomes more about staying elected than doing the job that they were actually elected for. And it doesn't, I'm not blaming a particular party, because every party does this. In Canada, we've now had the Liberal Party running our country for 8-9 years. My opinion is it's time for something different. And while people will want to immediately argue and immediately fight to say, well, it can't be that, we've got to do this. We've got to have a party that can embody and exemplify some of the fundamentals from each of the parties, because really what we should be doing is putting our nation first. Unfortunately, that's not the way the systems work. It was a really, really awesome chat that I had with Justin, and I'm already looking forward to the next time that we get to sit down, because while we didn't agree on everything, what we didn't agree on, we were able to both kind of look in the middle. And traditionally, I will be very open. I would love to get my mother-in-law on this show, because she could tell you stories of how we would argue about how we would have to be so absolutely correct and absolutely steadfast, in our belief, and that the other person was absolutely wrong. Now, we did it from a real loving position and we did it from a real caring position, but there wasn't a lot of negotiating. And Positive Mike is always welcome to throw his comments up here. I can even, if you want, Positive Mike, I can even send you the link and I could bring you on, because we can bring you on and have you do some conversation here instead of just making smart comments. But I'll leave that up to you. But as a kid, I was really prone to be conservative. I I really believed that it was more important that people take care of themselves, and that when I made a dollar, the more of that dollar I was able to keep in my pocket, the better off I'd be. Now, if you take a look at that mindset now that I have the label of being a business owner, People will make all kinds of assumptions, but the older I've got and the more that I've done this, the less conservative I think I believe I am. I will not anymore identify with a political party, though. I won't call myself a conservative. I won't call myself a liberal. I won't call myself any of them because I believe I'm more of a free thinker that on any given subject, I want to be able to make my own decision and I want to be able to take a look at it and make a decision what's either best for me or what I think is best for a region or what's best based on whatever criteria I decide on any given moment. I fear that the second that you identify with a party, it doesn't matter which one it is, you give up a lot of that choice and you give up a lot of that free thinking because now you're either going to be in conflict with your party if you disagree, or you're not going to think about things and you're going to have to toe the line. And we get into too many of these situations where we're not really fighting about what's best for the situation. It's just about being right. And that doesn't benefit anybody. It was more in the context. Let's just see. We'll throw all of Mike's comments up here because right now Mike's the only guy that's uh, that's participating. Don't usually discuss politics. Not being a smartass, Mike. I know you very well, and I'm not worried about you whatsoever. It's that today was the day where this happened, and like I said, I think Mike maybe missed the beginning. Is that I've had these thoughts bouncing around my head for a long time, and I didn't know when I was going to do it because usually when we get a guest, we focus on the guest and we go down various rabbit holes, and I never really get to do the rest of this stuff. But I'm seeing too much rhetoric and I'm seeing too much stuff. Like I've eliminated myself from a lot of the world of social media. I no longer have a presence on Facebook at all. My company, Cantorque, does have a presence, although our presence is stranded and we're completely isolated. You can find us on Facebook, but you won't see any active posts that didn't come through a LinkedIn or pardon me, a linked Instagram ad because when I eliminated my account, the company account got stuck, and although we've been working on trying to resurrect the Facebook account, we can't do it even through our social media people who have direct contacts with Meta. We can't get it. So my existence now, I do have an account on LinkedIn. I will say with while this is I believe this is actually broadcasting on our LinkedIn page, I don't have any real activity on LinkedIn. I don't spend my time looking at what anyone's doing. I really, really don't, um, look over our competitors' shoulders. I don't look at what the industry stuff is, and I remember from the days where I was maybe a little less, or just say a little bit more active, where I would take a look at certain people that it seems like their entire day was sitting in front of their computer commenting on everybody else's thing, and that was kind of what they identified as their job or as selling, is that they tried to endear themselves to as many people as possible, and fair. I got rid of all of our Twitter stuff. We have no presence on Twitter whatsoever because I don't condone what happens there. I don't like what the feeling and the stupidity of how they've self-sabotaged that business, from trying to rebrand one of the most recognizable companies in the entire world, um, from Twitter to X, which just rolls off the tongue. Um, so our main presence is now on Threads. We have a few pages on Instagram, and maybe eventually we'll do something more with LinkedIn. But I see so much absolutely, even as Threads is trying to take off, and the commentary on Threads is that, wow, it's so much nicer here. You can just block the trolls. We can, let's be self-supportive. I heard someone that I disagreed with the other day and I just blocked them. CEOs are bad. Everything is bad. Blah, blah, blah. It's like, wait a second. If there's no CEOs, then there's no businesses. If there's no businesses, then there's no jobs. If there's no jobs, then there's no employees. If there's no employees, and it's not that it's always top down. I'm not saying that. Everybody, if you want to fight, go ahead. I won't be part of it. Everyone's got a role to play. And not every CEO in the world handles their business that way. And not every CEO was given a silver spoon or a golden handshake. Yes, there are a handful, and they're the ones that you hear about because they're also the ones that seem to require the attention. There are a lot of business owners. We're all CEOs. We think about employees, we think about our suppliers, we do the very best that we can. We try and share along the way. But the thing that happens when you own a business that doesn't happen when you're an employee is you have to take risk. You have to risk all the time, whether it means you're not sure if that next check from a customer's coming in, but you gotta pay the bill. That means you've got to pull personal money out, whether that's from an investment, out of your mortgage, out of, you know, a retirement plan. You've gotta, try and borrow from the bank, although the banks won't do jack shit anymore. You've gotta take risk. You've gotta make decisions, and for that risk, when you get it right, there are absolutely amazing rewards. You don't have to do that, at least not to the same extent as an employee. And again, I'm not saying that one is more important than the other. I'm not saying one's better than the other. What it's important to understand is that sometimes as a CEO, yes, you might get disconnected from that of an employee, what an employee is going through. But the thing that's almost universally true is that all CEOs at some point have been employees, but very few employees have been CEOs. So they don't really understand and they can't appreciate what it's like. And I can only speak now from the CEO standpoint. I was an employee for a long time and I don't forget what it was like. And I don't forget what it was like to have somebody else making all the decisions and not agreeing with them, but having to respect them. And I said that as an employee, and I've got dozens of people who can validate what I was talking about. That when we'd get into certain situations, I would say things to the extent of, listen, it's his name on the front of the building. I don't care if I agree with it or not, I still have to respect it. When I put my name on the front of the building, then I get to make my own decisions. And now, I've been in that position now for 23 years. It's it's really, really undermining, and it's really, really I think it's far too hostile for employees and CEOs to be pitted against each other. Just like anything else, and this is where the topic started, is that it's important that we work on what we agree on before we focus on what we disagree on. And make no mistake about it, I've had some absolutely god awful employees. I've had some great employees that I probably didn't treat as well. I either wasn't able to or I just didn't see what they were capable of. When somebody leaves you, you have to understand, did they leave because you wanted them gone or because they wanted to be gone? And if they wanted to be gone, is it because of something you did or is it because, maybe they just weren't the right fit? Both situations are okay. It becomes really important though, and there's a lot of self-analysis because as employers, we are not on level footing with employees. If we've got a 6-month or a 12-month employees, let's just say a 12-month duration employee, the employee decides that they are not going to show up to work anymore and walk away. There's absolutely no ramification. Now, theoretically, we can take legal action and we can try to recover the damages from an employee who just walked away, who we invested in, who we provided training for, and who has left us without proper time to get a replacement. But if I do that to an employee, I there's a whole employment standards board that, without any investment for the employee, without one penny having to be spent, they can go talk to the labor relations board. we will automatically get a letter. We will automatically have things that we have to do, and there is absolutely nothing we can do about it. But there's no, employer standards board where if an employee does something poor, that for us to take action, we always have to spend, and that discrepancy is not fair. Whether you agree with it or not, I don't care. It's plain simple truth. Um, we have to be very careful. And, there's so many things that I read and there's so many things that get recycled, but it's like, um, what if, the CEO says, what if we train the person and they leave? And the person responds, well, what if we don't train them and they stay? Okay, well, that's great. That makes a lot of sense. And yes, you want to train your employees as much as possible, but training employees is extremely expensive. If you send them out to school, not only are you largely having to pay for tuition, but you also have employees that are going to be away from your business, whether they're taking time away during the day, whether they're doing it at night, what have you. There's a great cost to the business of training someone in any capacity. And it's part of what we have to accept as a business. But what people don't seem to understand is the more our expenses go up, the more our prices have to go up. It's simple math. People are starting to see it with the price of gas. Price of gasoline is extremely expensive. It affects every single person. When when it happens to a person, that doesn't affect their profits, but it does affect the amount of liquid income that they're left with. By the time they're paying high rent or high mortgage, by the time they're paying their taxes, by the time they're trying to fuel their vehicles and deal with increasing insurance costs, there's not a lot of money left over for anyone. And while people can understand that it's costing them and it's making life difficult, they can't seem to appreciate that the exact same thing is happening to a business. People seem, especially the people who have never been there, they seem to think that businesses have this magic ability that we can just generate money by writing a check. And that is not the way it works. Or my favorite, and I joked about this with an associate of mine yesterday. Well, you can just write it off. It's an old joke from Seinfeld where they were talking about writing things off, and then Jerry says, "Do you even know," he's saying to Kramer, "Do you even know what a write-off is?" And Kramer says, "No, I don't, but they do, and they're the ones that write it off." I used to have this conversation with my in-laws all the time because people seem to think when a business gets to write something off, which is also known as a deduction. I'm not talking about the Donald Trump level, where you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars of fraud over decades. There are legitimate deductions. And what you're allowed to do is in certain situations, when you have an expense against your company, you don't have to declare that money that you spent as income. You get to exclude that from what you pay taxes on. That's it. So if you spend $1,000 on a legitimately deductible thing, people think that the government sends you a check for $1,000 to reimburse you. And that's not the way it happens. It just means that you don't pay your income tax on that $1,000 worth of stuff. But there's a world of other shit that you have to pay on. Pardon me. The big thing that drives me crazy, and I've talked about this before, but I'm not sure if I've ever talked about it here. We have a thing in Canada called the GST, which is our goods and services tax, which was originally designed for one thing, but of course it never works out the way that it's promised. The thing as a business is we have to dedicate resources to collecting the GST. We have to dedicate resources to accounting for the GST and remitting the GST. And if we make any mistakes whatsoever, we're penalized for it. We're putting our company time in, we're putting actual money in to make sure that we do everything properly so that the government can get a piece of the action of what's going on. We don't get to deduct that person's time. My accounting people, my bookkeeping people who have to spend so much time dealing with that, they charge, we can't claim it. It's such a double standard. Anyway, that's kind of the rant. I just want us to try and work on getting along. Um, There is another, let's see what Mike's got to say here. There is another social media platform out there, I believe, just in the initial stages. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's on the fringes. I believe that threads will likely take over from Twitter. If they do, great. If they don't, I don't care. It just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where they're at, what they're doing, what it's called. There's always going to be an element that's terrible. I mean, the reason why I think so many people are so down on, the label of CEO is what happens with a guy like Donald Trump. It happens with a guy like Elon Musk that gets incredible support from the government, gets incredible breaks, and while the one genius has taken a company that was valued at $44 billion, or at least that was the valuation when he purchased it, even though there were a lot of people that said he overpaid, that's driven it down to a valuation of $8 billion in about a year. That takes a lot of effort to make that happen. Guy like Donald Trump, it was given an inheritance by his father, has done virtually everything that could be done wrong in business. He's done wrong. In 1 minute, there are clips of him presenting the world with what his net worth is. And he'll say it was like over the years, we'll say it's anywhere from $1 billion to $10 billion. And he keeps saying it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again because he's trying to brag and he's trying to create an impression about how wealthy he is. At the end of the day, when his net worth was actually released in his criminal trial, he was pissed off because he said nobody should know what my net worth is. Well, then why the hell have you been talking about it as the absolute platform for your entire existence? It doesn't make any sense. And these are the things I get that people get frustrated with. I get frustrated with them because it's complete bullshit. Today, another guy who some maybe know who he is and some don't, a guy named Bernie Ecclestone, who's the former head of the Formula One group, pleaded guilty today. There's been a tax evasion case against Bernie. We didn't talk about it on the radio because I don't really want to focus on this negative stuff. But Bernie was convicted today of having $400 million in an offshore account. And when they read the ruling, he said, I didn't know where it was. How do you misplace $400 million? Instead of more rambling, I see one of our guests. Well, he's not quite ready to go. I saw he was ready to go and then he got up and walked away. You can't say that you've misplaced $400 million. I'm sorry, Bernie. And the thing that's super frustrating at the end of the day, they found it. They figured out where it went. They knew what happened. And what does he get in the end? He gets a monetary fine and he gets a suspended sentence from prison. This is total bullshit. If if I'm convicted of a fraud, and it could be $10,000, maybe I didn't pay a bill, maybe something happened, maybe we just weren't physically able to do a thing, and we get convicted, I am going to go to jail, and that's for pennies. And these are people who've done this their entire life, and this is how they amass a lot of their wealth. So that I do understand why people get frustrated, because there is a multi-tier system, and there's a different set of standards depending on who you are and how much money you have. And I'm sure Bernie was able to argue that the fact he's like 83 years old and he doesn't have a lot of time left on earth means that he maybe shouldn't go to prison. While we're waiting for our friend to come back, I wanted to show a couple of the things that we've been working on. Changing gears here, we call this podcast Talkin Torque, and we do talk torque. We talk racing torque. We talk the torque in my business. We talk the torque that happens in other people's businesses. And I really like to share their stories of where they came from and how they got to where they're at. So while we're waiting for Mark to come back, this is one of our tools that we've been working on. And this I am exceptionally proud of this. This maybe doesn't make sense to you if you're not an industrial customer. If you are in the industrial world, this might make a lot of sense. Now, this is a disassembled tool. There's no guts inside of it, just because I wanted something light to play around with. But what we've done here, this is what we call our CT3. This will be a 1-inch drive hydraulic torque wrench. This tool has the capability of running from about 300 to 3,000 foot-pounds. The real number is about 330 to 3,300. And traditionally, hold on a second. I know this isn't the way to do this, but I have one of our old tools within reach, so I'm going to grab it. Just bear with me. If you've got the audio version, that won't make a lot of sense, but for the people who are watching the video version, that will make sense. This is one of the original tools that we had. So this was our CT3. This was produced overseas. Now, this device at the back of the tool is what we call a reaction arm, and this has a mechanical component. So to remove and replace this, we slide this down, we pull this arm off, we put it into a different position, and then it locks on. What the problem with this is a few things, but mainly when a person misuses the tool and they react on it in an improper fashion, they'll break this mechanical stuff. And that means the tool's rendered unusable. And it also means that you have a very big repair, having to replace a multi-$1,000 housing or the arm or what have you. And now you can see why I do this with a hollowed out tool, because they are quite, that's about 10 pounds. So once you get that away, it's quite heavy. What we did with this tool is we removed all the mechanical attachment points. We partnered with a company called Lantha Technologies, which is a Calgary company run by a really good friend of mine, Evan Travers. Sorry, Evan. And what they've helped us with their patented technology is now, instead of the mechanical attachment, this is still on. I can tell you there's 105 pounds of force holding this on, but it's magnetic. So we've got a little steel plate on the back of the tool. You can't see anything in this tool, but once it goes on, again, when it pops on, there's about 7 pounds of force when this tool isn't fully engaged. So it's a little bit of a wiggle to get it off, but once it's on, you cannot pull it off. So when somebody's misusing it, it now gives them the time. If they're loading up on the wrong side of the tool, the arm's going to actually separate. It gives them time to stop, and that arm will come back. Really, really, really cool stuff. I mean, again, we're a small manufacturer compared to some of the big guys who have been around a long time. It's a really, really, really big, it's a game changer for sure. We're the only ones that have it. It's trademarked and patented technology. And what's really cool to me, again, I don't spend a lot of time looking at our competitors, but what I can tell you is, which is now about 12 years that we've designed and produced our tools, we've come up with more new things in that period of time than any of our competitors. They're kind of stuck now with their existing models. They're stuck with what they've had. The people around the world, they can see what we're doing now, and they can see that there's a lot of true innovation. I come up with some ideas, but I'm smart enough to know that I don't know everything, and that I like to work with all these other companies. So when you're having a conversation with an engineer, he may be connected to a partner of his because he knows he's working on a thing, and so on and so forth. And that's how we got connected to Lantha. But wanted to share that. I got a couple other things, but our good friend is sitting in the wings here, and I just want to bring him on. I'm going to cue a little introduction here. This is a very good friend of mine from the world of racing, a guy named Mark Patrick Roy. My pronunciation is going to suck. I'll bring him on here because what's going on, my man?
Cheers.
Oh, wow. This is a real change of pace. You've got a drink and I don't.
You're not, you can't have me online and not have a beer with me.
Well, can I say that this is tequila?
Absolutely. You can say whatever. We're living in a dream, my friend. So you can say whatever you wish.
Here you go. Cheers to you.
Cheers to everyone.
So I don't call very I refer to a lot of people as my friend. I refer to very few people as a good friend. So MP did something last year that was just so generous and thoughtful and absolutely it was a thing that was absolutely the last thing I ever would have wanted or expected, but it just happened at a time where we were we were in a really bad situation. And what happened was do you know what I'm talking about?
I think you're talking about Three Rivers slash Drummondville.
Yep. So last year, we were racing at GP3R. Now you and I knew each other. We worked on the spotter stand together. MP also has the distinction of being the official radio guy for the NASCAR Pinty Series. So he travels to all of our races. He's always got his equipment on site, and for the spotters, this is our main guy to help us. He helps program all of our radios. The spotter largely gets responsible for doing all the radios on the team. We need to have all the accessories. Anyway, so we got to know each other a little bit. And at the end of the day on Saturday, we're trying to leave the track and we can't because someone in my party, who I won't name, locked. I had a trailer key for our hauler, but all of our stuff was in the bag in the hauler, and we were in trouble. We figured out that our truck driver, Ron Hall, love you, Ron. He was already back at the hotel. He agreed he'd meet us kind of halfway, but we were pedestrians, and you kind of saw what was going on. You said, "Hey, like, how can we help?" I said, "I don't know. I need to get to Drummondville somehow." "Oh, here's my keys. Take my car, no problem." Like, what do you mean? You've never seen me drive. You don't know what's going on, and managed to save the day. So, very
I can't
greatly.
take full credit though. The Karine was 100% involved in the decision making, and she said, "Well, we can't leave these guys in the parking lot. We have to help them." So that's when we did a quick huddle, and we said, "Hey, can't be worse than me driving, so go
Well,
for it."
we
So
had the quick huddle, and then I was personally escorted, which was another sign of trust. Personally escorted by your daughter from the
paddock.
garage across the bridge, through the baseball diamond, like through the labyrinth to find the car, which was another sign of trust because I could have been anybody. So hopefully I validated your trust.
Absolutely, the trust was already validated. I
Yeah.
I didn't know if that was gonna be the story or the one where you were in a spotter stand without a radio, and I
Well,
gave you mine. So I didn't know which one it was gonna be, so
so that I I told that story about 10 times this year as we went back to Delaware, and probably 5 people on our team reminded me of that. Like,
did
"Hey,
they?
you got your radio?" I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa. Hold on a second. That whole story is not my story. That was how things happened." I'll go back because I'm sure you know what the story is and you maybe remember, but
What
when
what what I remember is you counted on someone again to transport you, and that person was already at the track by the time you were still at the hotel.
That's a fact. So my driver, a gentleman named Alex Tagliani, and I am not going to I'm not gonna give him the courtesy of anonymity. Um, we were staying at the same hotel. We had talked. Normally, we get together for breakfast, which usually means I go for breakfast by myself. I have a coffee, I eat my thing. Then I'm like, "Hey, bud, where are you?" "Yeah, I'll be there in 10 minutes." And then it's like an hour later, and we're scrambling to get out the door. And what happened during this race, I'm waiting. I had my breakfast, I'm waiting, and then I get a phone call from Fritz saying, "Hey, where are you?" I'm like, "I'm at the hotel waiting for Alex." He's like, "Alex is at the track." I'm like, "What?" "I don't have a car. I don't have anything. I'm here." Like, I'm I'm a passenger. He was supposed to give me a ride. "Okay, I'll get an Uber. I'll get there as quick as I can." They're like, "Well, you're missing the spotters meeting." I'm like, "You've got to go sit in. Just put a hand up. You'll be fine." So I get to the track, we're like the session's already live. So there is nothing that I can do at this point. There's no tunnel in Delaware. My radios are trapped in the transporter. You are very good at listening to the other team's radios. So you have radios that have every channel on it. The problem that we had, you were very quick to give me the radio. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to go on track. The problem is I didn't have a headset, which maybe doesn't sound like a big deal, but it's really, really, really loud when the car's on track. So all I was able to do, the only way it worked is I was able to take the radio and I could hold it like right to my mouth and tell Alex when something was going on track. And then I would have to sit here and like hold it right up to my ear because if he said anything, I wouldn't have been able to hear it here. That was one of my more memorable spotting sessions for sure.
It was also very funny to watch at, and it kind of reminded me the days where we were playing in the park with walkie talkies and pretending to be secret agents or something. So it did bring a smile to my face that day.
I was way too scared to be pretending anything. Like usually spotting, uh, I've become more comfortable with spotting over the years. But there's a really, really high level of focus that I need to have because I tend to get more hyper focused on my car instead of kind of, I'll always look ahead, but I don't really pay attention to what's going on behind aside from who we're going to be immediately around next. And there are some guys that are just extremely good that they can watch their car, but they're actually watching the race at the same time. And I can't do that. There's a lot of races we go to where, well, did you see that? Or like, I don't even know, like if we're not in the contest, a lot of the time I don't know who wins. I have no idea because we're busy fighting around this person and that person, and it gets to be pretty messy. But maybe which style of spotter are you?
Actually, it's funny that you mentioned what you've just did because there are a number of occasions where after the race we kind of talk over what went on. There are certain aspects that I'll remember very vividly, but there are some I at the time probably I would have been able to answer, but 30 minutes or an hour later, I don't even. It was unnecessarily detailed that my brain just you know flushed out. Uh, in terms of spotter, I think there's three types of spotters to answer
Okay.
your question. I think number one spotter is the type of guy that goes up there and he just wants to enjoy the view because we are getting a great view of the racetrack, uh, regardless if he's watching the cars or something else. And most of the time, that guy is the kind of wrong spotter to have because he's the one that's going to get the driver all fussed up. And when the driver gets in an accident, the first thing the drivers does is who hit me, and this guy is the kind of guy that's going to repeat who it is, and he's also going to ante it up by saying, "Go dump him or go spin him out or whatever." So I'd like to think neither you or I are that kind of spotter.
So that's
Then
number one.
then there's the second type of spotter, and I don't know if I can put you in that one. I can definitely include you in that one, but you may be in the third category. Second category is the type of spotter that will look out for his driver, try to calm him down when it's time to calm him down, play cheerleader when it's time to play cheerleader, and will definitely know of all the rules, all of the procession that needs to happen, and of course when to pit, when not to pit, based on team strategy. And then the third type of spotter, and very few people can be in that category because for one comment that you made before, it takes a lot of attention to a lot of things at the same time. To like the second spotter that I just spoke about takes maybe I don't know. I'm going to use a simple analogy here, but it takes 100% focus. The third category takes 120%. Whether it's because you're scanning other teams, whether it's because you're talking strategy with the crew chief while the driver is racing and he doesn't know you guys are having that kind of discussion, but it's that little edge that's more, and then you can also bring feedback to the driver. Try a different lane. By the way, the car is handling this way, and report it back to the crew chief. I'd like to think I'm in the third category, but it also depends on what is interfering with me, whether it's people in the stands, whether it's people talking to me, or me just not being focused. But I'd like to think I'm in the third category, and I think you are too. Uh, but it's very difficult. It's very draining, demanding. At the end of a race, people don't believe how tired I can be from listening, watching, speaking, thinking, doing all those things at the same time. So, three categories. Sometimes I'm number two, sometimes I'm number three, but I'd like to think I'm definitely, and I know you're not, number one.
Well, I'll tell you, I'll get back um I'll get back to your answer as to which one I am second. People don't understand the pressure that there is to be a spotter. And I can easily quantify it because as a spotter, the first thing you have to accept, and I don't think, we're talking about, previously before you jumped on, I was talking about the risk that you have to take when you own a business versus what you don't have to do as an employee. And a lot of people don't want to take on that risk because they don't want to have their life rolled into their work. Where a business owner, and we can talk about your business enterprise after this, but when you step into that role as a spotter, the responsibility is the ultimate because you actually are responsible for your driver's life. Now, in our Pinty series, it's extremely unlikely that someone will die, but it is entirely possible that someone can be seriously hurt, can be crippled, can have their career ended. And if you're the guy that makes that mistake that leads to that, you have to live with that the rest of your life. And that's really, really hard to to process. And I don't know that a lot of our spotters actually, if they've come up through stock car racing, I don't know that they ever really have to do that. But Alex threw me to the wolves. One of my first ever spotting gigs was the Rolex 24 at Daytona. And I'm here to tell you that this is the most difficult event to be a spotter at in the entire world because not only are you on a road course, you're on the road course at night. There's four different categories of cars. You have to do these crazy long stretches. My longest stretch, I was spotting for almost 5 straight hours from like I think I went from about 10 o'clock at night till 3 or 3:30 in the morning when our third driver fenced the car. But trying to pick up a car that's almost a mile away on the back straightaway at Daytona or
Do you have a
was
heat gun?
tough. Or when two cars are kind of pointed, when they come out of turn 5 at Daytona, where they come heading straight to you, you can't tell at night which one has the depth. Or maybe there's a superhuman spotter that can do that, but I can't. Um, but there was an incident during the day where I just happened to hear I was watching Alex come off the oval at the start finish line towards turn 1, made the loop and was getting ready to head towards turn 5, and I heard NASCAR make a call, which made my eyes look forward. I'm like, whoa, 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 back it down, back it down, back it down. There was a crash. It was a crash that involved Mimo Gidley, which really short tracked or sidetracked his career for like 5 years. I don't know that he's ever got back to racing. But Alex was, he was in one of these DP cars. He was sitting way down. He couldn't see the car in front. He was getting ready to make a pass. And if he did, he would have pulled out at like 140 miles an hour and destroyed this guy. And that could have been it. That was my moment where it's like, when he came up to me afterwards, he's like, "You saved my life." Like, holy shit. I didn't really think that, because to me, Alex is like a Superman that, he can do no wrong. I mean, I obviously know he can do wrong, but like when he's got his hands on the wheel, I don't have anything to worry about him as a driver, which is why you have to focus on everything else. Getting back to your question, I think I'm part of all three. I think I'm part of number one because I always think it's so fucking cool to be up in that stand and to hang out with you and Kenny and Jojo and all of our spotter people,
Threatening.
because it's like I knew who these guys were before I ever got into it. So it was so cool, like to, when you get up there, there's maybe a couple of looks in the beginning that people don't know who you are or people don't come and talk to you, but it doesn't take long to integrate yourself. I think I got a bit of number two, and a bit of number three. I will tell you categorically, and I don't think this is a team secret. I have nothing to do with strategy. I will not talk to Terry about strategy whatsoever because Terry's the guy that comes up with the strategy, and there's nothing that I can add as a spotter that Alex hasn't already thought 50 moves down the road. He's got his handle on that. The only thing that I will offer him, and I'm getting a lot better at, I won't say I'm good at because there's always going to be somebody better, is I'm pretty good at picking up, at Delaware, the line that DJ and Trayton were taking was different than what we were taking. And I'd point that out to Alex and say,
That's definitely number three spotter.
the thing that I do better than anyone though, and I at least for Alex, is that because I've driven and because I've raced and I've actually done two oval races, and I will do any oval race that I can get my helmet on for. I wanted to get the driver's perspective and know what it's like to try and fight a car that wasn't ready to do a thing, or to try and go to a place that it just didn't feel right. Because too many times in the past, our crew chiefs or our spotters would say, you've got to get the car below the yellow line. You've got to get the, it's like, understand guys, if Alex can't get the car there, or when he gets the car there, it's too upset and it makes things miserable, then trying to get the car there doesn't make sense. So I think I do better than anyone for Alex is say, like, listen, everybody's running below the yellow line. You're about 2 feet high. If you can get it down there, if it feels okay, give it a try. Otherwise, keep running what you're running. That's kind of what I do.
What you've just said is 100% what I meant by category number three. But let me kick it up a notch.
Ooh,
Let me
I like you with a beer.
There you go. Let me give you something that you can improve the team's competitiveness with something that you can see, but not very few are saying. And that is, for example, you just mentioned it. Everybody is on the yellow line. Alex's car is 2 feet above the line. Obviously, he probably has a push, or he's coming in too fast and he can't turn the car where the adherence of the tire will not stick to it enough to where he can keep it on the line at the speed he's doing, right?
Yep.
That's simple physics, right? Everybody understands that bullshit, but everybody should understand that. Now, where you as a spotter can bring in, especially somebody that has raced go-karts or karts, sorry, not go-karts, but karts.
We accept both terms.
You should be able to tell them, Alex, your wheels are too turned in, like oversteering it. Your hands on the steering wheel are way too over. Therefore, you're now push. And what's the next thing that's going to happen? He's going to complain the car's loose because he may not realize that he's coming in too fast or that he's turning the steering wheel too much. It's going to eventually snap because he's going to slow down, and the tires are grip, and the car's going to want to turn around. Ass is going to try to get around the front
because the front pushes, then it grabs, then it throws the back.
Exactly.
I will tell you without hesitation, if we ever get to the point that I have to tell Alex how to drive the car, we won't work together anymore.
No, you won't tell Alex, but maybe you can bring the feedback to Terry.
He already knows.
No, but let me explain my point of view on that. Is Alex may say, the car is a little tight in, but mostly it's loose off.
Yep.
And you can then say, but Alex, you're coming in 2 car lengths further into the corner than everybody else. That's why they can make the turn on the line, but you can't.
Yeah. And I say that very differently because our car's tendency is that we struggle on entry, but we're very good on exit. So what I'll relay to Alex is like, we've got Larry Jackson 3 cars back. Larry closes within 1.5 on entry, it neutralizes in the middle, and you open up to 3 on exit. He knows until I start giving him closer intervals that whatever he's doing is going to maintain that gap or that we increase the gap. Telling him, turning too much. Here's how the other part of the conversation goes. Alex will say to Terry, I'm really tight in and I'm really loose off. And he's like, and he'll come with a very, very, very detailed explanation. And Terry will say, like, look, I'm looking at the brake bias. You need to try and dial 2 clicks back and see how that feels. Because if we can get a little bit more rear brake on entry, that's going to Terry can see it. He knows he's watching that. So I don't have to.
Okay, then let me give you another example. You're sitting outside the track, they're sitting inside the track. They can't see the glow at the rotors on the outside, but you can.
Correct.
That's a detail that
100%.
number 1 spotter won't give, number 2 spotter will not give, but number 3 will.
Yep.
And that's where I say, I'm going to use a word here that I don't like to use, but the better spotters or the ones that bring added value to the team will notice things like that. Body roll.
Oh yeah.
You know, I like to call it track intervals, but if you're like you mentioned, maybe you struggle going to in the corner, but apex off, you're much faster than all the other ones. But at a given track, it's not as important track position on exit as it is on entry.
Yep.
So that's what I call
added
team
value.
strategy.
Yep.
Strategy analysis that needs to be done, and depending on who the spotter is, and also who the driver. You mentioned something very important. Some drivers don't give a shit as to what you're going to tell them because they know better. Some crew chiefs will tell you they don't give a shit because they know better.
Yep.
But I think the better teams are the ones where the combination of all three, because it's the sum of everyone's knowledge that can be taken to the bank.
I'm pretty aware of what my skill set is because, if you've ever heard me describe what it is to be a spotter, hey guys, say good job. I say, listen, all I did was talk about what I saw. That's all I do.
No, but
Now,
I agree.
but I think there's a percentage of spotters, and I won't mention anyone, but there's a percentage that really like to hear themselves talk. They like, but there's also crew chiefs. There's also, there's a few crew members that they'll get on that radio because they want to feel important or they feel like, and it's like, guys, you got to stay off the radio. Like, if you've got something to say, absolutely say it. But while you're kind of doing a thing, we're maybe coming up to an accident and this is bad.
Yep. And the worst feeling as a spotter, and it's funny because I was talking to someone just this weekend about it, is you say something, for example, I don't know, two back, he's attacking on the inside, or he's looking, or there's a wreck in turn one, and you're 0.3. And obviously one of the other crew members was saying either an interval or a lap time, and you're saying, oh shit, what did he hear? Did he hear me or did he hear the other one? You don't want to go over the conversation again. But
yeah, we don't have full duplex. We don't
exactly.
have full duplex radio. So while you're like, for people who don't know, while you're talking, if somebody tries to go over and talks at the same time, it actually creates like an interference audio signal, and it just goes brrr, and you don't know what happened, which tells everyone like, get off the radio.
Car order services speaker.
There you go. So Positive Mike has a question here. I'm going to direct this to you. Do you use spotters on road street circuits? If so, why? Good question, Mike.
Absolutely. And the short answer, any edge that you can take, you will. So on a street circuit or road circuit, what you try to do is go to the key turns where potential of overtaking or accidents, and you put someone there to manage that corner, not the overall track. You probably need one of those just for officials, the team, but you want to make sure that in a key corner, for example, if there's overtaking, that you'll be able to tell your driver, as you said, the gaps between yourself and the other driver, so that he knows he's under attack, or he can take the turn. Uh,
He
see,
doesn't have to take it more defensively because
more,
he's got enough
right?
gap that he can take the quicker way instead of closing the corner off.
Yes, or I'll give you another example that I like to bring into the play. Let's say you want to overtake someone and there's no traffic behind you. You can be a lot more aggressive that if one of your competitors is one car length behind. You might not be as aggressive because you might be aggressive defensive at that time. So that's where all that strategy comes into play. And obviously, when a corner is like a 90-degree blind corner, you probably want to be after the corner to make sure that there's any accidents or damages, parts on the track that you can tell them uh, where not to go.
Yeah, well, and to further answer that question, we use spotters at every track because the spotter has in NASCAR has two functions. The first function is to keep the driver safe with what we see on the track and what MP and I are talking about. The second is that it's also our job to relay NASCAR's instructions to the driver. So we have to have a collection of drivers in a given area. So, as an example, is a street circuit in Toronto. We go on the very top of the Enercare Center, which sounds great, but it sucks because we can't see anything. And they don't. There's a monitor at the end of the front straightaway, but this year it was turned off, so we couldn't see it. We have lousy communication with our drivers. Once they kind of go behind a building, we can't actually get them. And while I want to make a joke about why that's the radio's fault as the radio guy, it's a matter of
Always the radio
simplicity.
guy's fault.
It
Always.
where we can blame somebody else, we always will. Um, on a road course like Canadian Tire, we have the same situation where we get collected in turn or outside of turn one. We'll often put other spotters around the track, and while MP is saying that that gives us an advantage, it's twofold because we can often relay a message to our driver at say turn three, who then can relay the message to our spotter who's on the back straightaway because we can't talk to all those areas with the radios that we have. So that really that goes. And even if we can't talk to them, they can have clear, quick conversation with the driver while they go through their area. So it's yeah, it works. Let's
I
see.
hope it answered the Mike's question.
We did say thanks, so I think so.
Good.
Yeah, Mike, we maybe need to introduce you to Positive Mike when you come back out here. Well, I don't know if we're gonna be coming back out here. Maybe you'll have a business trip out here. Um, but from the sounds of things, our Western swing won't be happening. But Positive Mike is also a craft brewery guy. So
Oh,
just so Mike knows, every beer that he dropped off to me during his last session has not been opened. They're still sitting right behind my desk here because I have to limit my beer so much because it affects me very poorly with gout. So
that's because you drink tequila. I only drink Kilkenny, not to name it. So, but we I try to drink the good stuff. So, Mike, to you and to all
I
the other
I'll
listeners.
tell you what, Kilkenny and Guinness do not taste the same when you go to Ireland. There's a whole process. My friend who was here yesterday, he owns a bar and he actually explained it to me with how the carbonation works and how frequently you have to clean the lines and all that. And he can get fairly close, but Kilkenny and Guinness in Ireland actually taste sweet. Not like sugar, but it's got a sweetness to it, and it's so less dark and so less bitter than what we get here, even with like the little carbon capsules. But
I think you were just too drunk to remember what the real taste is.
nope.
But
Nope. I've been a professional my whole life, and the day that affects me. Let's see. Mike's got one more for you here. Do you see any bigger ovals being built in this country? What do you think there, Mister
short
Rock?
answer. Short answer. Uh, in French, we say a mécène. I don't know if it translates.
Oh, the
Somebody.
only one I know is Tabernac. So
No, no, no. So okay, well, unless somebody with a shitload of money who loves racing, who wants a tax deductible expenses, wants to step up to the plate. Unfortunately, the answer is no.
Yeah.
As we both know, there's a beautiful racetrack in Jacassa, or named Jacassa, in Cayuga, Ontario. Unfortunately, when one of the owners passed away, it folded down. So I still have my fingers crossed that we'll be going back, because I feel it was the Canadian, as they called it, the jewel crown
Crown
of
jewel.
Canada. Yeah,
Yeah.
Canada.
Yeah.
Um, it's unfortunate, but it's all about making money now. And unless you can guarantee the return, I don't see it happen. And think of the cost of a light bulb that has gone up, what, almost 400% since COVID. Well, think of the Musco lighting systems, the aluminum bleachers, asphalt,
Yep.
track preparations, buildings, etc. It's just, I think that the better days are behind us at this point.
The crying shame with that Jacassa deal is that that was what the owner wanted to do, and they took 3 years completely rebuilding, reconfiguring, modernizing. This is what he wanted, and, you know, once he passed on, then his family said, "No, we're gonna turn this into a weed farm to go with the rest of our weed farms, and we're not gonna run it as a racetrack anymore." So it was this beautiful, 5/8 of a mile oval, within striking distance of Hamilton. And yeah, I mean, for someone to go out and build a racetrack is very unlikely. Unfortunately, I mean, in my time in the Pinty series, and it hasn't been, you know, that long. I've only been kicking around since 2014. We've seen, you know, Barrie Speedway gone. I can't think of the others, but you know, the
Don't,
only
don't get me started on tracks in Quebec shutting down. Saint
Oh,
Eustatius.
Saint Eustache is gone, that's correct.
You want to? Mike was asking about larger tracks. Sanair Speedway, or Super Speedway, has been sitting idle for close to 11 or 12 years. And the last race that was there was a couple stock car races for ACT stuff. And before that, it sat idle for another 10 years. So
Well,
over
they
the
kinda
last,
shot themselves in the foot when they used to have an NHRA national event at San Air on the drag strip, and, they shot themselves in the foot when they wouldn't allow. I think it was after the lead was out of the fuel, but there was something that happened with the fuel, and they said, "No, you can't come here anymore," and that
how the story really unfolded, I don't really know, but I know it was all the consequences, as you said, that uh, a Canadian government restricted lead content in
in
Canada.
racing fuel, yeah.
Well, actually, it was just not racing fuel; it was also in the cars. And Mr. Guertin at the time, who was the promoter and still the owner, by the way, he's got to be close to 90 years old, if not beyond. Um, didn't want to play the lobbyist game, and didn't want to, because I understand that initially they weren't going to allow any exemptions, and then by the time the schedule was out, they said, well, in Canada, if you want to apply for an exemption for special events for like once a year, you can. And that would have allowed the NHRA to come back for the drag strip. And the funny thing, that drag strip most of the time is being used for local drag events
Yeah.
or for bicycle riders to go and ride. So that's a
Yeah,
shame.
the problem, yeah, with Saint Eustache, I mean, that was another, really interesting facility. I candidly think that the Oval was terrible. I mean,
It was.
I didn't
It
enjoy
was.
it, but I enjoyed the area because it was so close to the city of Montreal and the surrounding area that it was, you know, it was essentially a town race, town oval, but the road course was awesome, and
But think
the
of the
crowds that
complex,
we
though.
got were unbelievable there.
Think of the complex, Colin. If you, I don't know if you were aware of this, but that complex got rebuilt. I don't know the exact year, but around the early '80s, under Claude Aubin ownership, and he finished or modified the road course. He made sure that the oval could also have drag strip,
Yep.
And if that wasn't enough, he tore down the bleachers, he rebuilt them, and they were pretty good. They were actually pretty stout compared to many other tracks I've been to. But then he also tore down the tower, built a three-story uh, aluminum building with windows, and this is the interesting part, two floors of restaurants. The lower level was hot dogs, fries, and beer, soft drinks. Second floor, you had a full dining experience where you could have pizza, poutine, chicken, smoked meat sandwiches, everything. A bar,
Yep.
TVs. After the races, you could go watch the whole program. Like the races would end 5 minutes after they'd start with the first heats and then the first features and so on. So you could actually rewatch your races immediately after drinking beer. And what many people don't know, the third level had a full white coat dining room. In
Mm.
other words, you could go there at the time in the early 90s when Claude did this for $100. You'd get into the races, filet mignon dinner, wine, and as you're eating, you're overseeing the racetrack. I even to this day, I don't know of a stock car event that allows for this.
Yeah,
I
none that I've been to, but I mean, I don't get exposed to any of that because it's
Charlotte does have
well,
a
they have
clubhouse.
suites. Yeah,
Yeah,
I've
they have
been
a
to their
clubhouse.
I've been to their like we rented a suite during the Coke 600 with when my brother-in-law turned 30, and we had a great time. But back to St. Eustache, they also built that second grandstand outside of turn 1 and turn 2. So, almost for the teams to have a place to, like, not the teams because our crew would be on the inside, but there were like all the family and the friends and all the rest who came from the paddock had a place to watch.
Yep,
Again, the oval wasn't great, but the facility was unbelievable. And
yep.
yeah, we're just not getting any more. We're
And,
not getting any new tracks.
and when you think about it, Saint Eustache closed down. Saint-Air and Tremblant was at risk, but I understand they got great turnouts this summer
Yep.
for the both the spring and the fall classics. It
On the
was a
road
great.
course.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
Tremblant only has a road course.
that's not
Uh,
true.
so we're left with, and St. Croix closed down a few years ago, and that was a beautiful facility where the Cascars went back in the days in the ACT. And so we're left with only two tracks, Montmagny and Chaudière. Considering the size of Quebec, we should have more uh,
Oh,
closed course.
GP3R.
Yeah, but that's a temporary
It's
one.
still an entire municipality getting around the world of racing for a couple of
Absolutely,
weeks.
and look at the history behind the event. People like James Hunt and Gilles Villeneuve have raced there and won, and
Yep.
it's a great event. But you and I, even if we wanted to promote an event, can't do it on a weekly basis. That's where it's sad, is that people in Quebec no longer have any tracks to go to, and the closest Ontario track we had, Capital City Speedway in Ottawa, shut down. So the next one is Peterborough, and that's what, an hour from Toronto, and
More than that, yeah, it's
or
closer to 2
okay,
because it's past, well, and we were talking about that, I was talking about that with someone yesterday because in that area, you have Peterborough Speedway, but before there, you've got Kawartha. So
yep,
Kawartha Downs, where we used to race, which was the most unique. It was an amazing oval, but it was the most unique oval because it was surrounded by a horse racing track. So
and a
we would,
casino.
yeah, the casino was off to the side, but that we didn't have to interact with that so much until Joel got us in there to do all of our year-end videos and pictures and stuff. But we could just, well, we had to get into the track. We had to go across the horse track and
Yep.
onto the raceway. Um,
You mean you didn't go for the shrimps before going to the spotter stand on top of the building?
the only time I wasn't actually a spotter in those days, so that was Warren Jones back then.
So you missed out.
Um, we would when Alex would have the motorhome, we'd stay at the track. instead of cooking, we would kind of walk over, we would have lunch or supper in the casino, and then we'd go back and just watch TV kind of thing. And to get back to what you said, at Tremblant, there are two racetracks. There is not one racetrack.
Well, it's two road courses. There's not an oval doesn't exist.
It didn't say it was an oval. There's the road
No.
course and the go-kart track. And the go-kart track is as good a go-kart track as there is in the entire world.
Is it? So
It is unbelievable. Built by Lawrence Stroll, now owned, I shouldn't say owned, but now operated by Tag and his group. So now that's under, basically between Tag, Pierre-Luc Ouellette, and Jeff Petriello. They run that, now been rebranded as Academy de Tag. And back to rental carts and then a bunch of events.
And do you know why I don't speak much about carts?
Because it's too awesome for you?
No, because I carry too much weight. Weight. So it's not entertaining for me to be beaten on the first lap. So,
well, okay. So tell me right now, what do you weigh?
Yes.
No, tell me.
Too much.
Okay, so I know it starts with a 2.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
And
if
then
I go to 3, I'm in trouble. I'm probably at 260, 265 right now.
Okay, so you don't outweigh me by that much, and I'm still competitively racing.
Okay. Well, maybe it's
I'll tell you what,
streamline.
you put your helmet on and you get a taste of it, and you feel all the things that hurt, and you
Oh,
get that
absolutely.
feeling of want to die. It gives you a little bit more motivation to get back into the gym, which is what I've been doing kind of nonstop here for the last few weeks. So
Absolutely. I seen the Instagram this morning where you were doing some dumbbells there.
kettlebells.
Or I'm sorry, we it's all dumbbells to a French guy.
This is the dumbbell.
And we I said, wow, he's actually looks serious about it, almost as serious as he is when he's on the spotter stand.
It's it was this is the first time we've done back-to-back sessions, but that's just the way the schedule worked this week, because I got a full day tomorrow, and then we head over to Italy on Tuesday with Tag, PLO, and Jeff, and we're gonna do a
And that's
rental cart event.
I was going to say, is that supposed to be a serious trip or is that a professional trip?
Well, we're getting into rental carts, so that's like you and me going to Spot at West Edmonton Mall. There's a decent prize if you win, but I don't think any one of us are going over there to win a go-kart. So we're going to have some fun. Alex turns 50 on Wednesday, so I suspect that at least one of the days will, after the racing, we'll have a little bit of celebration. We'll get him an unlimited supply of Moscow mules, as you you remember from St. John's.
Absolutely.
And I mean, it's going to be great. So looking forward to that. I mean, more than anything, just getting to see my buddies again. And there's no bad trip to Italy, I can tell you that much.
My next trip is not to Italy, but if everything works out with the wife, who happens to be a racing enthusiast, even more than maybe you and I, she wants to go to the Snowball Derby in Pensacola at the end of November. So we were actually discussing that yesterday, and when she returns after this conference call, that's our objective, is to book our Airbnb and our flights, and we'll be at the Snowball Derby.
Well, short of that, or if you want to add one more, it looks like we're set up to do the Rotax Winter Trophy events back in Florida, which will be the last weekend in January and then the first weekend in February. So
but that's right before the Speed Weeks at New Smyrna.
There you go.
Maybe we can hang on to that and go there.
Go from West Palm Beach to Orlando to Daytona. No problem.
There you go.
Well, New Smyrna, but you know what I'm saying. Should wrap it up here. We've gone a little bit long, which is more than fine. My question for you is, you made a comment last week when we were chatting that you want to kind of do something spotter related. Who do you want to try and rope into a future conversation?
Actually, what I like is to have another spotter, like 3 or 4
Yes.
guys, discuss different topics and kind of, you know, see the different points of view. Like when we talked about, the third types of spotter. Well, your opinion, my opinion was in line, but not 100% at par. So I'd like to see the conversation. One guy I'd like to see is Ken Katu, just because he's got so much he can talk about. You mentioned before you don't work on the car. He
Oh,
does.
yeah.
Uh,
He's Mr.
I don't
Transmission.
work on the I don't work on the cars anymore, but I used to. And to your point, I've uh, raced cars at Saint Eustache, so I know what it's all about. To rip a car on Saturday and have to rebuild it by next week, and also, but more importantly, out braking, pushing, being loose, and all that. So that's the type of conversation I'd like to know is, and for example, I'll put a first topic that we can discuss with Ken. I don't know if you saw this, but this weekend was the Thompson World Series, where there's like 6 or 7 classes that race at Thompson Speedway in Connecticut.
No.
And the final race of the night, or the weekend, I should say, turned into a major brawl between teams. And one of the families have just been independently, kicked out of racing. But it's not the first event this year of the type. Uh, so my question is it that we're being softer than before? Is there more of this fighting going on at the races, or is this just the fact that we have more publicity with the internet and all of this stuff? Because all I saw this week was the announcements that they got evicted, kicked out, and they can't come back. And now other tracks are joining in and support the Thompson and saying, well, if they're not going to be racing there, we don't want them racing at our
Yeah.
facility. Well, there's two
Yep.
angles. Is there more fighting? And B, how should it be handled if an incident occurs, let's say at Delaware? Should Flamborough and Peterborough and all the other tracks in the area also apply the same sanctions?
Well,
I,
and
I I'd like to know the
I
opinion.
think I think you're onto something, and I'm happy to line it up anytime that works for everyone, because I think it would be a really neat conversation to have, like, a spotter recap of, to talk on Tuesday after the race about, how our races went, whatever. But then to have a couple of days to go back and look at, like, I don't watch NASCAR anymore. I can't.
You mean it's still on TV?
I don't know. I don't know. Like, I don't watch Cup. I don't watch Xfinity. The closest thing I'll come to watch is the Truck Series. I'll watch some ARCA stuff. Um, but I can't be bothered with the nonsense, and it kills me because the NASCAR race director now is Brad Moran, and I love Brad. He's just a great dude. He's a Canadian. He's our former race director. Like, everything about that whole story is awesome, and I still can't make myself watch it. And but I'd love to get because the thing that a spotter has, and it is universal across the board, and from, say, our conversation, our spotters meeting in Wetaskiwin, that someone's good at lighting the fire and then just walking
Oh yeah,
away. And there's a handful of fairly entertaining guys. Every single one of them has an opinion, though, so it could be a fun chat.
absolutely. I'd like to see that. Contrived racings. Actually, all racing is good racing. There's just some that are more entertaining than others. How's that?
Yeah, the racing part, I think NASCAR does a pretty good job of. I don't care. I Everyone says they hate stage racing. I don't, because once they went to stage racing, they got rid of these bullshit competition cautions because a guy threw a water bottle on the track that has absolutely nothing to do with anything. But Jeff Burton got way too far. Like, Jeff Burton wouldn't be able to lap the field anymore at Loudon like he did in whatever that was, 98, 99. Lap the entire field. That will never happen again. Like,
You mean Alex is never going to do it again?
well, in our series, yeah, we'll do it again. Don't worry about that. But not in the cup level. That's we don't have stage racing. But where a team hits on something that nobody else does, they find a thing. Yeah, they're that much better, and NASCAR tries to take it away from them, which makes the mediocre guys a little bit appear more competitive than what they are. And that kind of stuff, like I hate the loose wheel rule, especially now, because yes, in the old days when they were a 5 stud wheel, teams would cheat. They would weld nuts on, they would drill out 2 or 3 of the nuts so that they would just slide straight on. They'd only be held with 2, and sometimes that nut, like those nuts would break. You can't hold a wheel on successfully, especially on the outside with 2 nuts. But nowadays, there's no advantage to under tightening a center lock wheel nut. The teams don't.
I don't think the center lock should be there.
Whether it should or it shouldn't, it is there. But the teams don't make the nut. They don't make the mounting system. They don't do anything. And they still have to wait when they put the wheels on. They have to wait for the fuel to get in. There is no advantage to trying to go too quick or get that thing under tightened. If a wheel comes off now, the team's still getting the crazy $100,000 fine, 100-point deduction. 2 of your crew people have to be publicly flogged in the streets. 1 guy has to get kicked in the nuts. Blah, 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 blah. How does this make any sense? You've got drivers who are intentionally taking people out on track, killing the racing, and there's no penalty for that, but something that the teams have no control over anymore. There's not a team out there that isn't going to fully tighten their nuts. If the wheel fails, if the nut fails, if the thread fails, that's not the team's fault, but they're getting the penalty for it now that everything's under a single supplier system. That's the kind of stuff within the new cup that just, it makes no sense and it's not entertaining. And the fact that I can tell you already, because they're in the playoffs, which is another disaster, that I don't care who the final 4 are. It's going to come down to the last race at Phoenix. It's going to come down to the last pit stop, and that's where the championship's going to be won. Is that exciting? I already told you how it's going to happen. It's not exciting. You maybe don't know who it is until you get into that point, but I'd much rather prefer the olden days where it was built over a season. Teams could theoretically claim their championship with 2 or 3 races to go. Jeff Gordon did it. Dale Earnhardt did it. Countless drivers did it. And so what? It's a championship for a season, and they're trying to compete with stick and ball, and it just doesn't.
I agree with that statement.
So
that's too bad. We won't be able to argue on that one.
I can take the other position just as easily. I don't necessarily believe it, but I can do it. But
so who do we try to get? We're rope in, to use your expression, Kato, or go with JoJo right away?
Well, if you can figure out how to get Kenny Kato to sit in front of a computer for half an hour or 45 minutes, God bless you. I don't think that we can get him on, but maybe we will. JoJo is no problem. If we offer him a venue to talk, he will not say no.
Then it's a deal. I'll start calling right after this call, my friend.
Yeah, we need to get a guy like Phil Winter over at Larry Jackson's.
Absolutely.
But literally everyone would be welcome.
Phil can talk to us about the bowling in the off season.
He could talk to us about Coca-Cola, and he can talk to us about never drinking alcohol. And there's lots of things that Phil can talk about. He can also talk about his frustrations on the radio. I don't know if he will, but I get a lot of personal conversations with Phil, and they're mind-boggling what they go through on a week-to-week basis.
Because Phil, unlike you or I, has the wrench, push the car, do the tires in addition to spotting. So we have it easy, buddy. We have it easy.
If the only reason I touch the car is because I need something to lean on. If you see me working on the car, something's gone horribly, horribly wrong. I don't hide from it. I embrace it. I am not a mechanic. Don't want to be.
I sometimes get to cook. So for the crew members.
Yeah, I'll do that at night, not for the team because our team's too big. Because this kind of came up quick. Tell me really quickly for everyone, who do you work with in the NASCAR Pinty series? I know it's more than one driver. I'll let you explain that however you want as a spotter.
Actually, this year was I've been kind of a putana. I like to say is I've worked with many teams because as you said, as the radio support person for the series, I tend to be involved with all of the teams. But I did have a contract with Donald Teach, and he only does the ovals. So Donald was my primary team, I guess, is what you can say. And then I got to work with you guys with Alex at Toronto Indy. I worked with Alex LeBay at iCar. I got to work with other drivers outside of the series, but and more important, impressively, with Alex Gannett last year to win GP3R, which is close to your heart.
Love it. Yeah.
Uh,
Well, and I'm, Alex he's been a good friend of ours for a long time. I know, like, in the world of racing, things come and go, but I judge everyone based on how they treat me. And Alex and I are more than fine. I loved watching him win that race last year. He was doubling as a CRG kart driver at the same time, so it was fantastic. And those come from behind wins, those underdog wins are, man, that's where it's at.
And this year, outside of the Pinty series, I also worked with some ACT drivers, Remy Perot, and I touched base with a driver I used to support over 10 years ago. Excuse me. And I worked with Patrick LaPearl for the last 2 weeks in the past series and ACT US. So it's the year where I've touched the most drivers, and I tend to try and stay only with one because, as you said, the drivers don't want all the same information. And so it's a little difficult to go from one to the
Yeah.
other. But hey, what do you know? Maybe I'll be like our friend Jeff Gutler or Jordan Buster and start doing gigs every weekend in all the classes. Yeah, I'm sure they're having a ton of fun doing
Is
it.
that really what you want?
I don't know.
Yeah.
What I want is I want to be rich and be that one that builds that bigger oval that Mike was asking about. That's what I'd like to do.
I buy as many radios and cables as I can from you. So hopefully that's got you on your way.
And just so you know, if I did, my house would be like Glenn Steyer's, right next to the track.
Well, I think that might be, it's not for me to share, but I think next year I might do a behind the scenes of just kind of, walking through the main entrance around the Steyer's complex. But I have talked about this and I'll mention it again because it's really easy to focus on what he has. But I'll tell you what, last year's race, and I can't talk about this year's race because after the race, I was staying in a hotel. But last year I had my camper at the track. We stayed the night. We stayed way, 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 way through the
Night
night.
and morning.
It was well past 6 o'clock in the morning when sat there with Stuart Friesen, and you were there. Chatted with the end of the night was between myself and Matthew Scannell, and had a great chat. He's such a great young guy and a really great driver that's just really budget limited. But the next morning, the thing that I will always take away is, as we're getting ready, we had our NASCAR appeal call from the contact we had at Wetaskiwin, which you and I have talked about a number of times, where we had to, submit our all the information and all the evidence and go through, talking to all these people. And, I was there for, man, I mean, I was on the phone talking for probably 15-20 minutes. Alex did his thing. We kind of get brought on, we get brought off. But as we're doing it, Glenn is out there. Glenn Steyer's the owner of this property. This is a campground that's big enough to hold, what would you say? Could they put 1,000 campers on that property?
For sure.
It,
For
it's
sure.
it's incredibly huge with the
And by the way, I don't know if you know this, but there's the one next to the track where you
yep,
were. There's another field
yep,
next to that
yep,
field, and there's another
yep.
field the other side of the
Yes.
racetrack. So definitely 1,000. If they ever had a cup race, I bet you we beat Daytona in terms of campers.
Well, Daytona's pretty big.
No, I
It's
still
pretty
think
big,
so.
but Glenn is out there in his flip flops and shorts and a t-shirt first thing the next morning. Now he's got a staff, but he was out there cleaning up everybody else's garbage from the campground. All these people who were like too careless threw the garbage down, and he's out there, throwing things in the back of his truck at 9 o'clock in the morning. I'll never ever forget that. So whatever, people seem to they get an impression of who Glenn is based on how he drives on track or what they see of his stuff. I'll tell you what, the man cares about his property. He cares about
Absolutely.
taking care of people, and that's 100% evidenced by his representatives, Clinton Jeffrey and a guy like Adam Ross, because they are as good as they come in our world of racing. And while I am not 100% in belief that our cars need to be back there, I think we need to be back there in some capacity because we don't get treated any better anywhere else. And I
Hey,
personally want to see us put our drivers and share sprint cars with sprint car drivers so we can go out in like we look like donkeys out there, and I don't care. Like, these sprint cars go out there and they're ripping 13, 14-second laps, and this is what people come to accept.
uh, 11-5, by the way, 11-5.
It's a
We,
comparative, but no, the cars.
we were doing 13s.
No, we were running 18s.
Oh, was it that
Yeah,
slow?
they were running 13, like high 13s, low 14s, and then we go out and we start running 18 twos, 18, Trayton and Kyle were able to get down to like 18 O's, and like our car, we just could not go faster than an 18.3. Some guys were running 18.5. The point is, 4 seconds a lap on an oval that small, we look like we're standing still. So I don't think it showcases how good our drivers are. We need to take our drivers
Agreed.
and put them in these sprint cars and have like a contest where we go run out and sprint, then those guys go out and run out, and eventually we do a split field where we can kind of have the battle of the sprint car guys. I think that would be very entertaining.
We can talk some more about the dirt experience and what we can do to make the show. I'm going to call it a more pleasant experience for everyone, and I'll say why. And that's just going to be our entry point into that conversation.
Yeah. And if
I got ripped on, and I mean ripped, by all my customers that are on the dirt side of the world, because they kept telling us that we looked like a bunch of taxi cab in the middle of a traffic jam. And I went on a show similar to this, but I was solo against three guys from the dirt world, including David Abad, that that was racing there that weekend. And I tried to explain to them that Oshweekend, or the dirt experience, is all about an event. It's building an event where the fans can appreciate racing they're not used to, and that we can appreciate what it is to race on dirt and what it involves. And but furthermost, Glenn Stiers has hit a grand slam every year by A, having a world class facility, B, putting up more money than any other races, both on dirt and asphalt, three, thinking of things that no other promoters think of. And just as a quick example, rock live band entertaining in between the races, not for an hour,
all
all
day.
day and all
Yep.
night and all
Yep.
night. Pizza to all the teams as an appreciation of their hard work. And that's just a token of all the things that they have
Yep.
done to step up. And to me, that is now where the bar sits for any other track to put on an event.
Yeah, as far as the event goes and as far as the way we were treated, there's nothing even close. And my belief is I'll have that conversation anytime. I have opinions. I don't have every fact in the world, and I'm not in the world of coordinating how to build the NASCAR Pinty series. But I believe if we're going to have the conversation, we need to get guys like Clinton Jeffrey and Adam Ross involved in the conversation so that they can, have their say as to what they like to see and what, again, without trying to pry into what might be proprietary business, let them have their say and let them to say like, okay, here's why we do it this way, and here's why that other thing won't work, and really help people come to understand.
And excuse my French, but as Malcolm Strachan says, the driver that drove for Jim Bray
Malcolm
in the
Strong, yeah,
'98, Strong. Uh, um, hey, we're in Canada. How come we don't have an ice racing event?
it's a fair question.
So, anyways, but that can be included in our many future conversations with spotters. Uh, as you said, we're kind of running a little late, and I don't know if you've heard, but the alarm system keeps opening and closing. That's because Karen, who we spoke about
She's off her
before,
call, so
she's back, and her first statement to me was when she walked in, "Is that Colin?" And I said, "Yes." So her first statement was, "Please say hello," and so I'm gonna ask her to come and say
no, for sure.
hello, so she can do it live, so the rest of the people can see who was that charming person who offered the car keys so that you could go to
The
Drummondville. So
the
Karen, just come and
lifesaver for
say
sure,
hello.
and she gets to present herself in front of our ones of people. Hey, how are you?
So, all right. So I got to run, Colin. This was a blast, as we
Yes,
say.
sir.
Let's do it again. But next time, I expect Mike's beer to show up so I can try it,
Positive
as opposed
Mike's,
to
yeah.
Talkin.
The jalapeno wheat is my favorite.
Oh,
Oh
really?
yeah.
I'm all about jalapenos as well.
His
So,
beer, I
uh,
again, I wish it liked me as much as I liked it. It's not about what I do, but it's just one of those triggers for gout. So I allow myself one every like 3 or 4 months, and that's about it. But yeah, there's no shortage. He threw it up that he should throw. Mike, you can't support our whole team, man. You'll be broke. So we might be able to bring us. So what we might need to do is bring the team here where we can kind of control, because if we live, if you're gonna throw the whole thing out to the team, man, you gotta have. There's a lot of beer, and keep in mind, we can't just keep everything for our 18 team, because it's 18, 20, and often 22. So big crew.
and don't forget, we can't touch it until the races are done.
But that's
So
why we go through so much, because once the
we
checker
catch
flag
up.
falls, it's full go time. Yeah, we got two priorities for the spotters. We need to get back into the track, and somehow, even with our magical wristbands, that didn't get us into the infield any quicker. And then we need to find a refreshing beverage, as long as we don't have too far to drive that night. But yeah, next time we need to get into Entreprise MP Roi. I won't say that properly. That's as close.
No,
I
it's
could
good.
I could say it in English, but then I don't feel like I'm doing any respect. We need to talk about how you got into racing, your history in racing. There's a million other things that we need to get into, and I'd love to have a fight night with our good friend Jojo. If we can get Kenny on, Phil, the whole crew, I think it'd be awesome, for people to see another level and another layer that you don't necessarily get to see if you're at the track, or definitely what you don't get to see when we're on TV. So thanks for jumping on. Is there anything else?
No, it was a pleasure, and again, I'll raise my glass to the first one and many more.
Well, here's my tequila, and right back to you, my man.
All right, thank you,
Okay, we'll see you next time. I'm sure we'll talk this week.
thank you.
There he goes. And here's a 1 hour and 44-minute episode for a show that I really didn't have scripted, didn't really have planned. Um, when I come back next week, I'll likely be off, because we're going to be in Italy. Although what I might try and do is do a pre-record, and then I'll just publish it, at normal time. Can't promise to do that, because I don't know what the schedule is yet. But we'll by next Thursday, we'll be at the CRG factory. We'll be in Brescia, and getting ready to run our kart race. As always, thank you very much, Mike. You're great. We need to start spreading the word, and we need to get hopefully get a little bit more interaction Thank you for listening wherever you happen to catch this. I'm trying to be aware that we do have audio versions available on iTunes and all of your podcasting sources. Thank you to everyone at Crier Media, Rookie, Dean Blundell, all of our counterparts. And that's it. I'll try and get to the rest of these tools that are hidden on my desk here. Next week, we got our battery torque wrench. We're good at talking about that on the Jason Greger show. We got some of our accessories, and if you have any questions, I'm easy to find. Hey there at talkintorque.ca. You can also reach me, Colin, at cantorque.com. That is CANTORQUE.com. Other than that, we will try and catch you next week. See you, everybody.